students, today we are going to look at inequalities, and we are going to talk about how inequalities and equations are very similar. So the first thing I want to do is just go over the symbols with you and make sure that you remember what all of these different symbols mean. So we have 4 different inequality symbols that we're going to be using. This symbol right here, this is our less than symbol. And another word that we can sometimes see that talks about less than would be the words fewer or below. Those all indicate that we're talking about less than. This next symbol below here, this is our greater than symbol. And we'll also hear greater than, more than, above. Those all indicate that we have more of something. Then we've got our less than or equal to. So that means the amount is smaller or the same as the other amount. So remember that inequalities are comparisons. So less than or equal to means the number we're talking about is the same or smaller than the number we're comparing it to. We'll also hear the words at most or no more than to indicate less than or equal to. So this is going to help us to know all these words when we're going through word problems, so we know which symbol to use. And then this is our greater than or equal to symbol. Other words that we might hear to mean that could be at least or no less than. So we're going to learn how to first read a sentence and turn it into an inequality. That's going to be a skill that's going to come in really handy as we get into higher levels of math when we're attacking real life problems and turning them into inequalities. So here's our first problem. So we're going to turn the sentence into an inequality. It says there are at least 35 people in the gym. So at least, that's the key word that we want to really focus on. So at least means there's that amount or more. So we're going to be using it's either equal to 35 or it's more than 35. So there are at least 35. So we're comparing something to the number 35. So the something is either the same, equal to 35, or more than 35. Then we keep reading and we see that the something is people in the gym. So we're going to use our variable to represent the people in the gym. So I'm just going to use the variable P to represent people in the gym. So the number of people in the gym, P, is at least, it's greater than or equal to 35 people. So that's our inequality. All right, let's try another one. The carton holds at most 12 eggs. So think of an egg carton, right? You could fit 12 eggs in the egg carton, or you could fit less than 12, but you cannot fit any more than 12 eggs. So the number of eggs in the carton, so we're talking about the carton, I'm going to call that C. It can have less than 12 eggs, or it can have exactly equal to 12 eggs. So we would use that less than or equal to symbol. And we're comparing it to 12, because 12 is the amount that the carton holds. Okay, so now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at solving an inequality and graphing it. And what does it mean for something to be a solution to an inequality? So right here we have our inequality, x plus 2 is less than 1. Now, I want you to think back to what we've been doing with equations. This is just like an equation, except instead of an equal sign, it has an inequality sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to solve it exactly the same way as we would solve an equation. So that would be using inverse operations. Then we'll talk about this part over here in just a minute. I'm kind of ignoring that for right now. So what we would do is we see, we've got addition. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 2. on both sides. So a positive 2 and a negative 2, those are opposites, so those cancel out. So we have x, and 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Then we bring down our symbol. So this says x is less than negative 1. Okay, so that means x can be any number less than negative 1. So we're looking here and it says, okay, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Are those less than negative 1? Well, yeah, all three of those are. So yes, every single one of these is a solution to our inequality, because our inequality says anything less than negative 1. Okay, now we're going to look at the graph of this inequality. So when we graph an inequality, we're just drawing all the numbers on the number line that are solutions. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at the idea of an open circle versus the idea of a closed circle. So an open circle, as you can see on our graph, is when the circle is actually not colored in. Now, what this is telling us, it's telling us that 5 is not one of the solutions. But the solutions are everything bigger than 5. So the way we would write that inequality is we would say, okay, our solution, any variable, I'm going to use an x, is numbers bigger than 5. So greater than 5, but not equal to 5, because 5 is an open circle. So when we see an open circle, those are the symbols less than and greater than. Now look down here where we've got our closed circle. Closed circle means 3 is a solution. So if we're talking about our variable x, again, 3 is a solution. So x can be equal to 3 or less than 3. So our inequality would be x is less than or equal to 3. The closed circle is when we have that or equal to sign underneath. So those are for our closed circles. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do some practice solving and graphing. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to graph this inequality. So when I graph an inequality, the first thing that I want to do is I want to draw a number line. And I always just take the number that we're comparing to, and I put that number in the middle, so negative 1. Then I put a couple numbers larger than negative 1 and a couple numbers smaller than negative 1. Then I look at my symbol and I think, okay, does my symbol tell me to have an open circle or a closed circle? It says greater than. So that would be an opened circle. So I'm going to put an open circle on my number line. Now this is the hard part. I am going to be coloring in all of the values that y can be. So it says negative 1 is greater than y. That means that y can be anything smaller than negative 1. So when I'm looking at my number line, I'm thinking, okay, well, where are the smaller numbers? The smaller numbers are this direction. So I would be shading in all of the numbers to the left on my number line, and that goes on forever. So I would just draw a nice big dark arrow going to the left. And I want to make it really, really clear that I'm going that direction. Okay, let's try another one. So again, I'm going to draw my number line. And again, normally I put this number right in the middle, although it's a fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put negative 2 and negative 3 right in the middle. And then I'm going to put negative 1, 0, negative 4. Then I'm going to pay attention to my symbol. My symbol is greater or equal. So 2.5 would be right in between 2 and 3. So I'm going to put a closed circle because it could be equal to 2.5. Now I'm going to shade all the numbers that z can be. So z, it tells me z is greater or equal to 2.5. So z can be 2.5, or it can be all of these numbers greater than negative 2.5. So I would be shading into the right because bigger numbers are to the right on my number line. And that would be my graph. So you're going to go ahead and practice learning about solutions of inequalities and graphing them and writing them and going from words to symbols.